Is Carson Lawrence locked in? Is Vandy about to get another wave of commits? Well, Brian Smith joins us. Let's get it going.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. On today's episode, we're going to explore everything in recruiting. Brian Smith is here to help break all of this down. Brian, is Carson Lawrence visiting? He's visiting everywhere. Is he solid to Vandy, or is there somebody else in play?
That looks like a ladder. I mean, the visits are the visits. I always tell people that I track what people do, not what people say. That's especially with politics, but it goes right along with recruiting too. If you look at his official visit list, like Virginia Tech's been after him, etc.
Ole Miss. I think it's Ole Miss that's probably the biggest contender, right?
Could be. Depends on your perspective. I mean, that's a Southeastern Conference school. That's an easy default answer. Brent Pry and Virginia Tech are doing a pretty good job in general, though. You never know. And that would be the outlier pick, like something different. Sometimes kids just want that. And it just comes down to visits. I doubt Vanderbilt is throwing a ton of NIL money at him. So if Ole Miss goes that route, which they do sometimes, maybe that would be a difference maker too. In today's recruiting, there is no guarantees. I don't care if a kid tells me 5 minutes before signing day where he's going. I don't care. It's just It changes too much. So I know multiple players that are going to go to schools they don't want to go to, but they are because of NIL. That makes it impossible for me to give projections. And, you get the backstory later, like, oh, okay, that's why you did, you know what I mean? And it's like, so these things are really, really complex.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and he's a special kind of player. If he ends up signing with Vanderbilt, he'll be the highest rated player they've signed in quite some time.
Well, you need guys like that if you're going to make any run. I mean, Vanderbilt has been really, really struggling in SEC play, which they normally do, but like, you would think with the Clark there, et cetera, they would kind of make an uptick. You got to get players. I don't care if Vince Lombardi in his prime was there. It is about players. And this is how you start, especially with kids that might be more local to you, et cetera. But even then, it's hard to beat University of Tennessee out, Alabama, Ole Miss. Those schools are going to be right there too. So anytime you get a kid committed like this, it hurts to lose them.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially, because you get him in a position where you're solid, or you feel like you're solid, and when they start recruiting for you, maybe that helps lock them in. Is that one of a telltale sign if they start doing that?
Not always, to be honest, because the NIL part, that's where it's like that is the end all be all for some kids and or their families. And even after that, it's the other thing I tell people, it's relationships. A lot of alumni don't like the following statement, but it is a fact. Players will pick the coach, not the school.
Right.
And you can throw things at the computer screen all you want. That's not changing because the players are banking on a coach helping him get to the NFL. Again, I know the alums and stuff don't like hearing that for any school. That's just not going to change. I haven't had one kid tell me I'm picking the school just because that's where I grew up rooting for this year. Not one.
Right.
So it makes it hard to project again because, like, how's the relationship with the quarterback coach or the DB coach, et cetera? Everything is fluid.
Absolutely. And with Clarkley's overhaul, though, in his recruiting department and things like that, I mean, there's been a lot of changes wholesale across the board. With him taking over the defensive play calling, does that have any boost to chances of signing not only Carson Lawrence, but everybody, or holding on to Van Zale Hinton or any other defensive targets out there?
It would have to, right? Because he is a very good defensive mind. He did well at Wake Forest as an assistant. He was a really top assistant coach at Notre Dame as the defensive coordinator. I think he's one of the better defensive minds in football. But at the same time, it's still relationship building. So he has to be the final piece to get you over the top, not the prime one to get you in the race. So his assistant staff, like it would be for Saban's or for anybody else's across the country over the last 10 years, those guys going out and building relationships get you to the point where Clark can close. So whether or not they get these guys over the finish line might end up being him, but he's not the one that's going to get you there in the first place.
Right. And there was another big target that visited last weekend, Byron Nelson out of Katy, Texas. Is he offensive line? Vanderbilt desperately needs offensive line help. Is he? I'm hearing what I'm hearing or what I'm reading is that his visit was great. I think it's a great. What are you hearing about Byron Nelson?
Byron is a player that I watched on film today, has a lot of athleticism and a lot of power. I don't know a lot about his recruitment, but the one thing I know is you're not going to find many guys that dry block like him. And he's from Katy, which that area on the west edge of Houston is elite. They put in all kinds of players across the country every year. He's going against dudes. Vandy doesn't normally get guys like him. I don't know if he can play tackle, but I guarantee he can play guard. And he's a young man that has the power to maybe even play pretty early. Most offensive linemen don't because you need a couple years in the weight room, but he's naturally strong and kind of just built like an upper body that you would think of for an SEC player. So I don't know much about his recruitment, but I love his film.
Yeah, he immediately jumped off the page. Same with Matthew Parker, the out of Jackson, Mississippi. Huge, 6'8", 300 pounds, offensive tackle, right tackle specifically, I think, and he fits what Vandy wants to do offensively with Tim Beck and Jerry Kill with the primary run-heavy scheme. And I think he would be a tremendous right tackle. He's just burying people. I hope we can keep him as well, and I think he's going to be a special player.
They need more size, too. If you're going to compete with the ridiculous amount of athletes in the front sevens of the SEC, if you don't have a few maulers, it doesn't have to be 6'8", 300 out of high school, although it's nice.
Yeah,
you don't have a chance. And this is one of the things you're talking about. They need more linemen. Well, they need more specific types. They need guys that on 3rd and 1, you have to scheme against what we're going to do because you know what's coming. Can you stop it? Right. Georgia's offense was absolutely generic forever until just recently, and they were still dominant. Why? Their guy was just better than yours. They had plenty of these guys that were 6'8", 300 in that range. So I'm not saying Auburn's going to recruit on Georgia's level by any means, but if you can get a few guys like this, it changes your offense because play action becomes more likely because you're getting 5 yards on first down instead of 3. Those kind of things matter in the grand scheme of things. And it's why if you look at the portal, Corey, you remember back just recently, how often did you hear there are no tackles in the portal? Well, there never are.
No.
Really good linemen go to a school and either they turn pro or they graduate from there and go get a job. Linemen are just different. Offensive linemen usually stay together and they stay in one spot. So you need to get the high school ranks and get the best players you can each and every.
And develop them, yeah. And I think that's important. I see a lot of interior guys more so in the portal when you look because Vandy is very rare. And the kid from Liberty that Vandy was able to get, Chase Mitchell, I think was a home run get because he started at left tackle at Liberty, and you don't see like you said, you don't see those very often.
You just don't.
And he's a grad transfer, probably just looking to get a year of SEC tape, I imagine. And this was his best opportunity to come in and probably start at tackle. That
is the rare exception. You have to count your blessings. With getting the kid from Liberty, you shouldn't count that as your norm. And I'm sure Clark Lee's smart enough to know that. But if you can get one of those every couple of years and you consistently get a couple of 6'8", 300-pound kids out of high school, you're going to hit on some of these guys. They just got to do it more consistently because even the 5-star linemen, a lot of them are busted. Georgia, Bama, Texas. It's just a really hard position to grade out long term because injuries and how these kids are going to grow. So you need volume more than anything else.
Yeah, just so that you can play the percentages and get them in your strength program, which again has also been overhauled, which I'm seeing and hearing great things. The results, Dante Carter was an early enrollee, and he's in line for some pretty sweet playing time this year. I think because he enrolled early, he's developed his body a little bit. He's gained 15 pounds already, and he's been there since January. Like that's like you get a lineman in that type of environment too, in that type of strength program, and you're going to your percentage is probably going to go up on your hit rate.
If you don't do it that way, I think you're in trouble. I mean, you got to develop linemen. A buddy of mine once told me, he goes, Brian, linemen are built, they are not born. even if you have a certain size frame and all that, it's really hard. You wind up 10 guys that are 6'6", 300. There are plenty of them in the SEC and the NFL. There is a lot of difference between one player and the other. It's technique, it's understanding scheme, it's understanding all the things you have to do in conjunction because it's 5 guys playing together. And part of that's the weight room, like you're talking about it. If you don't have a commitment to that at your institution, then it's not going to set a very good example, and you're not going to have a team that can play power football, which Vandy wants to do more of.
Yeah, and they've hired in that regard. So we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we got more recruiting with Brian Smith. It's going to be fun. Hang on. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Did you know that Gametime it makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier, or did until Boston won? Well, prices on Gametime app actually go down closer that you get to tip off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and your lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets to anything. And what I really like is the priority last-minute deals. You save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. You save even more when you let Gametime choose the seat and you choose the section. They have flash deals, which are exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of a game or event. I love the seat views, the panoramic seat view you get in the app before you buy. Have you seen that, Brian?
Oh, I've absolutely done it. It makes a big difference. Some of these places are big, man. If you can't take a look, it's hard to kind of project where you're at. Exactly,
and I that's my favorite feature because you get to visualize the event before you click to buy, and I also love the all-in pricing, man. When you toggle this feature, it shows you the total up front. I hate surprise fees. Gametime does a good job of not hitting you with those. And they had the lowest price guarantee, where Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, welcome back. Are you watching ESPN or Fox Sports? Are you tired of all that screaming? You have to turn down the TV. You just get exhausted from it. Well, you need to make the switch to Locked On College Sports today. And it's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Brian Smith is joining us here, man. He's hanging out. Thank you for joining us, man. I really appreciate this, doing a little bit of recruiting talk here. We've talked commits, and we're going to continue to talk commits, portal commits, incoming freshmen, just kind of everything, Vandy. We're going to get you caught up on everything recruiting here. When I'm looking at the target list and I'm looking at the commit list, I've noticed that they've also taken taken to target wide receivers. Antoine Martin is the latest one out of Iowa Colony, Texas. He's a wide receiver. It seems like they've got a type. They got that 6 foot, 6'1", 170 pound, just smooth speedster guys that they're kind of going after. I feel like they're trying to get some vertical stretch guys.
If you don't, SEC defenses will eat you up. There's too many good corners. You got to have speed. You got to have guys that can make plays down the field. And I'm not talking about only 50-50 guys. You got to have players that make a bunch of big plays in different ways, making guys miss. And 50-50 balls are part of it, but just running by guys is important. And speed is something this young man has. You put on his film, it doesn't take very long to see that. So Vandy needs more of it, and you've always got to have a bunch of it.
Mm-hmm. And they've got that as well. I mean, the guys that they've got committed as well. I mean, it's just kind of so when you look at this commit list, okay, and I've talked about this on my show before, this is probably the best that their commit list has looked in probably 3 or 4 years, if not more. What do you think?
Oh, wow. Maybe. I mean, if you add in the speed factor, I mean, what do they need to like change their program? I would say measurables is a big part of it. So length, height, speed, size, just the bare thing like you hear about in the NFL draft, you get blown away with it over and over again going into the combine. Those are the kind of kids that Vandy needs. So you might be right. They've gotten a few more of those kids and they got some more opportunities as well. But right now they probably are. That's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that really kind of jump off the page at me is like Austin Howard, the linebacker from Bartlett, Josiah Broxton from Tallahassee. Like those guys, like Broxton is really good sideline to sideline. He's really good. And I think with Clark Lee's defense, he wants to cover the A and B gaps with his defensive linemen and allow his linebackers to step and scrape and fill the C gaps. And, with a lot of movement, and those guys are going to be running laterally, probably more so than downhill. And I really like the way he runs sideline to sideline, just watching his film.
Well, that's something you got to have, man. If you're going to run, like Clark's defense, just studying it, he doesn't like to let teams get over the top, but he'll also run the alleys with his safeties, do some different things with his linebackers. He'll split his linebacker out and give him a chance in the slot against the guy somebody else doesn't want to necessarily. He'll give his guys chances, especially if he's got length and speed. He'll give guys more of a rope, which makes sense. Bill Belichick will do the same thing in that regard.
Yeah.
I just think Vandy just needs more of those guys to be able to rotate into their lineup so he can do more of what he wants to, because he's a really good our defensive mind.
Yeah, no doubt. And, Zion Lawson, 6'3", 230 edge guy, he's kind of an in-betweener, like coming in at 200. He'll probably come in at 235, 240. He'll have a chance to either stay there and build up his speed and gain about 10 pounds and stay as an edge linebacker guy, or put on some weight and put his hand down as a 4 technique. What do you kind of see with Zion Lawson?
That's one of those things you get into the complexities of the new schemes, because offenses have so much of an advantage with packages. For instance, 22 personnel used to mean 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. Here comes power football, occasional play action. Now you might be in 5 wide with 22 personnel. So if you don't have the ability to shift after you see what they line up in, and quickly, obviously, guys that are versatile can cover in the flat if they're in the end, you're in trouble. Maybe they can do some things like that 3-man and 4-man. That's pretty much where you got to be, because teams will keep you guessing all game long if you're not ready. So if you can play 4-eye, but also be able to play more of a traditional outside 5 tech once in a while and be effective at it, that's what you're looking for. You got to have guys that can do either on any play in today's game, and he's a better athlete than what they normally get. So good for them. And now they just need more of it.
They need more. That seems to be the theme. Just keep collecting depth.
You can't get enough.
Can't get enough. Keep building. And judging from this commit list, that's what they're doing there, because they've got a lot of portal guys on the back end, and they're just. It looks like they're just trying to recoup and refill and backfill with high school kids in the front 7. That's where a lot of the development's going to take place, and it seems like he's going to get veteran guys. Continue that trend of getting veteran guys in the back end. Is kind of the strategy I see there with the portal versus high school recruiting. Well,
if you put freshmen and sophomores at safety, especially like in Clark's defense, where it's more mental than some defenses. Yep. Freshmen are going to swim. Mm-hmm. I mean, for every kid that he's had, whether Vandy, whether Wake or Notre Dame, that was a player as a freshman, there are probably 10 that aren't anywhere near it at safety, because it's more the mental stuff and picking up the scheme and helping other guys. The corner position, I'm really curious with some of the guys. I got a few guys that have some length, but he's really picky about length at corner. He's always been that way through recruiting, and there just aren't a ton of them. They're going to have Vandy's academic profile. I think that'll always be a challenge. Same with end to a certain degree, but if he can get those 2 positions, Clark's defense just goes so wide with the options. You'll see a lot different kind of defensive scheme and better results too.
Yeah, I really like what he does kind of with the configuration of the safeties. I think he's going to have a lot of fun. This is not necessarily recruiting, but he's going to have a lot of fun with CJ Taylor, I think, because he's so versatile. And that's the kind of – in recruiting in general, it's this way, but like versatility is paramount, right? And CJ Taylor brings probably some of the most versatility on that team, if not in the conference, as far as what he can do playing back deep, playing as a linebacker, kind of playing in that low safety role. I mean, he can do a lot of different things to me.
Yeah, that's the starting point. Once you get one kid like that, your goal has to be to get at least that player the next year, and then the next year, and then it just continues. That's how you build a program that can go to bowl games. That's Vandy's first goal, and then you move on from there.
Yeah, no doubt. And we're gonna take another fast break, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Closing in on the end of the show, we got about 10 minutes left here. We're hanging out with Brian Smith. We're talking recruiting. We're talking portal. We're talking just general Vandy football, which, surprise, Vandy has a football team. But thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen. Make sure you check out Locked On SEC. Make them your second listen. Chris Cordy does a phenomenal job over there. And like I say every episode, if you want to be the most educated fan base in the conference, make sure you check out all the Locked On SEC shows. Locked On Auburn, Locked On Ole Miss, Locked On Georgia, Locked On LSU. Those are just a few to check out after this episode. Stephen Willis, Zach Black, or crew do a phenomenal job with their shows, and there's plenty of great content out there. Check out, Brian, where can we find you?
At FBScout_Florida. I tell you what, this next week or so, if you want to find just random wild recruiting news, my Twitter handle will be a great place to do it, because more commitments will happen in the next 10 days than the rest of the year. Absolutely.
Well, if you want fun, you want excitement, right over there. And it's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun, man. It's going to be fast and furious, right? So staying with the cornerbacks, man, we were talking corners. One of my, the two that were on like a watch list, a Pro Football Focus watch list, whatever your opinion is about Pro Football Focus, it's good to see Vandy on some lists, regardless of what do you think. It's good to see them on the list with people from like Texas and Oklahoma and Ole Miss. Mark Davis Jr. and Marlon Jones are two names at cornerback that were brought over from the portal. Marlon Jones, all conference from Eastern Washington. Mark Davis, Southern Illinois. He was a Saluki, also all conference. Both guys, long, physical, can do a lot of different things. And here's the key word on them too: versatile. And I think they're going to do some big things at corner there. Do you think they jump in as the starters? I don't see another person in their path.
Well, I hate projecting starters very much, but at the same time, you never know. You got to earn it. Yeah. You got to earn it. So who else would you say is the most likely? Like, who are the main competitors? Is there anybody that can move to another position? Clark Lee's done that before, taking guys I know at other schools and move positions. Yeah. I always look at it from a broader perspective than I think most fans. But if it's a first-year player that comes into your program and makes the dent, that's who plays. That's one thing about Clark he's always shown. He'll play a freshman. He'll do it if he thinks that kid's going to make a move. If it's the JUCO kid, he'll take whatever it is. Yeah. He'll make that happen.
Yeah, and I think a guy that's raw, and I think will get an opportunity to play some slot corner and some different personnel packages. Colby Taylor, the kid from Wyoming, he's 6'4". He's got every bit of length that Clark Lee wants as a corner. Would play great as a slot corner in some three, if they want to go like 3 corner packages and nickel and things like that. He was somebody, when he committed back in January, he was somebody that jumped off the page to me because of his length and his ability to run and stay with receivers.
Well, if you have guys like that in the back, again, it changes what you can do with your front. You can be more aggressive, or you can just drop 8. You can create havoc in different ways. Mm-hmm. Playing against a young quarterback, sometimes just changing your look after the snap, and then just their brain just goes haywire. You can cause a lot of kids to be very nervous. The other thing with that is he's a kid they might eventually, depending on how big he gets and all that, they might use him running the alleys a little more and being more of an aggressive guy towards the line. Maybe he's a blitzer. He's got some size to him. That's a good thing to have.
Yeah, maybe he's the next CJ Taylor, the versatile guy that can play deep or up close to the line of scrimmage, because he's a physical guy. He's just got to put on a little weight if he's going to do that. I don't think he's quite built like an alley runner just yet. He's kind of lanky, but he really jumped off the page at me, athletically though. But offensively, the receivers, the portal receivers, what do you make of those guys? I'm a huge fan of Jeremiah Dillon. Again, he's that smooth speed guy that can attack deep. He's somebody that can, do a lot of different things. He's the versatile guy. I think they're trying to recruit high school kids like him. He's the one that they're looking at. He's the model they're looking at. That's going to be my favorite receiver, I think, with this year.
Anybody they can get with speed, I don't know their portal list off the top of my head, but anybody they can get with speed is a priority for me on offense. Watching them the last couple of years, they haven't had enough deep threats and enough depth like that, what you're talking about, to make teams fear what they're going to do, and they've been able to crowd the line of scrimmage too much. So whoever the fastest kid is should be your favorite right off the bat.
Yeah, because he's going to make some things happen. If Pavia can have time to get it to him, he's going to be an impact player as well. But before we let you go, I've kicked around this idea of a 2-quarterback system, and both of these guys are transfers, and Pavia obviously is a wizard of the 10-back offense with the Vandy State Aggie doors because they've got all the New Mexico State guys, but. You have transfer Nate Johnson as well, coming in from Utah, kind of a raw talent. He was a redshirt freshman and had a really good game against Florida, had a few other good games. And I think he only played in 4 games, though, got nicked up a little bit. And just kind of philosophy-wise, I think they shuffled some guys around out there at Utah. What do you think of the quarterback situation right now? I mean, it's pretty obvious that Pavia is going to be the leader, but do you see a world where Nate Johnson can contribute in more than just like a change of pace guy, or like kind of a hybrid 2-quarterback system type deal?
Well, it depends on what you want to run. RPO, goal line, bootlegs. Everybody has a comfort zone with where they can do that, and coaches are weird about using 2 quarterbacks. Even Spurrier's done it, like he did. It was briefly during his time in Gainesville, but he did it. It just depends on the fit. If they think they need somebody in a situation where the starter is not doing good or they want to change up, I could see it. And it's not like Vandy has a ton of momentum at quarterback from last year. They need something to kind of go right, even if that means using 2 guys. And maybe they could also use that as a way to deter teams from just planning on one thing. That's the other thing with 2 quarterbacks. You make the defense think the next team you play, okay, we're preparing for 2 different styles, 2 different opportunities. Defensive coaches hate that. I can assure you from firsthand knowledge of it. So there's a lot of ways to look at that. Even
just the threat of it, honestly, is
absolutely
is remarkable. So, I was thinking this could work because they're 2 different style players. What Pavia does well and what Nate Johnson does well complement each other really well. So it's not like one threatens the other. I think you get a spark with Nate Johnson as he develops, and then you got Pavia, who's just an unequivocal leader, and he can do things in the RPO game, and he can do things in the downhill run game, versus Nate Johnson can be more of like your on the edge and perimeter run guy too.
Absolutely.
So I can see it, but Brian, this was fun, man. We got to do this more often. You're always welcome to join. And I thank you for joining on. Any last messages, any last words you want to say before we get out of here?
Well, I know that Clark really does love Vandy, and if you're going to have a guy try to rebuild the program, it's best to have somebody that actually wants to be there. So they're in better hands than they have been in quite a while.
Absolutely. And it seems like there's been some sort of light that's clicked on in his head. I think he's learned a lot through different experiences and different experiments throughout his time there. And I think it seems like he's found something that works for him now.
That's right.
And we'll see how it shakes out. And like I said, as they continue to build depth, it'll get better and better and better. So thank you for joining me, Brian. It's been fun. Check out Brian on Twitter, his Twitter feed the next 10 days. If you want excitement, please go visit that. But have a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday, and we'll talk at you then. Until then, anchor down. Peace.